Welcome back to the channel. So today we've got a little bit of a different pace of work. As we've been spending a lot of time on the front end of the car and everything leading up to this point. Um, I got the headers, got them wrapped. You guys may have saw that video, but one of the things that I came across is I went to go ahead and test fit the headers to make sure that there wasn't anything weird that happened. And in the process of testing the fitment on the headers, come to find out that they actually hit the oil pan that we picked up. And so I opted to replace the oil pan rather than going with a set of fender well headers. I talked with a couple guys that have had Novas, and they're like, look, I've had both. Like every single person that had tried both, they're like, the long tubes are the way to go. The ones you have are perfect. Do not swap for fender well headers, just replace the oil pan. So today we're going to focus on swapping this guy out, which is going to be pretty basic work, realistically. As we do this, this is really just a swap and replace. The one thing that we are going to do is paint the oil pan to match the motor and then go from there. But I want to actually show you a few interesting things on the replacement oil pan that we ended up picking up today. So the replacement pan is actually a stock replacement style from Champ Pants, and they had to make sure that they toss their sticker on here, which I'm not going to keep, but it does have a good windage tray. And then I'm going to take this out, and you guys can see that there's actually an oil trap door on here, which is going to be really important because with this motor and with this build, the aim is to make this thing a Canyon Carver, a road course type Trans Am build. I mean, that's the inspiration behind the whole thing because of the DZ302. But then pull this out and show you guys the trapdoor function on this thing. On this guy, I mean, we got a little bit of a messy outdoor workbench here, but we've got just two of these. Ooh, these things are on there pretty good. 7/16 size nuts holding this wind tray. Good, just there we go. Wedge it and pop out. So in this thing here, hopefully you guys can see, there's that. So right in here we have a oil trap door. So if I hold it open, it goes only one way. So what it does is it actually blocks oil from moving too far forward in the oil pan under deceleration, braking, you know, turning partially as well. That's still a little bit, but we'll still get some lateral slop on the oil in the pan. But just having this little trapdoor feature is so much better than just a stock oil pan. So this is why I chose this pan specifically to be what we use for at least the time being on the motor to help protect it while we have some spirited driving going on. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start prepping this thing for paint, and then we'll get this shot the same color green, and then we'll swap the oil pan out. So realistically, I mean, paint prep is not all that hard anymore. This does have some form of coating. I believe it's kind of like a zinc or a nickel coat, probably nickel. But all I need to do is have a good rough up layer and clean to do it realistically, right? Welcome to LA, just like we've had before. Sirens, helicopters. Um, but luckily these stickers aren't too melded on here. This one's leaving a little bit of residue. And the great thing about brake cleaner is, like anything that has I don't know necessarily to say alcohol in it, but it'll let you know if you've got cuts, and I've got a couple cuts. I pulled the drain plug out and just tossed on a different fine thread bolt just so I don't paint something I don't really care about painting. But I'm going to really make this easy for myself and just use the corded drill with a Scotch pad on it. All right, so you see after, get it in the sun a little bit here, and you see the swirl marks and stuff like that from breaking down the coating on there and just giving some texture to the surface so that we can start laying some paint after we clean the outside. So I'm going to clean the outside. I'm going to tape off all of the bottom here. So all the bottom down here so it doesn't get inside the oil pan. And then from there, start to paint it. So one thing I'm doing to give it a tack coat because, and also blend this a little bit, is I don't, or what wasn't used on the color was a high temp heat, believe it or not. And it's not because it needed it. It's just realistically like the color I wanted. This hunter green that was used for the car. Finding one in a high temp heat is not to say a pain in the butt, but realistically, like to give it a little bit of that ability to withstand some of it, we can kind of blend it. So I'm going to use the high temp clear as a tack coat, and it will actually provide a little bit more resiliency. I've done it in the past with other engines. And I just need a light dusting, and then fingers crossed that I have actually enough of this paint to do so. But before I even sprayed it, I made sure that I wiped all the dust off of it and so on. Like, I'm doing it outside, so like realistically it's going to get some dust on it. Perfection is not what I'm hung up on right now, or else this would be all paint booth and so on and so forth. We all know that this is not a Concours, a show car, a Riddler, America's best roadster, a Grand National roadster show kind of thing. This is just gonna be a ripper. That's the goal. All right. We'll see. While I'm waiting on that to dry. Oh, what's up, Benito? What are you doing? Just chilling? I'm gonna make myself a snack. All right. Hopefully the focus is set okay. Well, while we're waiting on that to finish drying, let's get this thing flipped over so that I can go ahead and get the other oil pan off. So I'm gonna probably just sell this on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that like partially Lowe's dealing with it. Like I literally just shipped off something this morning that somebody bought off me, which was a pair of 492 camel hump heads that were the ones that came with the motor. They were not factory matching to the DZ302, or else I I totally would have kept those. Um, and with that, like, the challenge comes to uh, getting people to not kind of messy around on that stuff. And so I've had some dealings over the past few weeks that just super annoying. I was selling the roller wheels and tires that I had on the car, the 14s, brand new tires, stickers still on them, like selling for just $200. And people are not just lowballing me, but like literally 10 people like made arrangements to come get them, and then never texted, never showed up, like whatever. And I'm sure this is not a common thing, but it just it just gets exhausting and annoying, right? I better secure the valve covers before I forget as well, so those don't fall off when I flip this thing over. This whole thing is just a bee to get going, to flip over and whatnot. Like there we go. Literally greased this whole thing to be able to move it easier, and it doesn't. It does not move. It does not move easier. At least it's not going to go anywhere, right? That's always great. But I actually have a roller engine stand that I'm going to put this on. That's like down here. It'll be easier to move around because this thing's tall, super tall and super stiff. So it's actually bouncy because this thing is so long. But let's start cracking these suckers loose. I'm just gonna work on getting this thing off. Nothing crazy, simple work, and then we'll move on. All right, so I kind of roll it back over because I don't want anything dropping into the crankcase. But I do wish we would have been able to use this oil pan because this one actually has lateral flaps, or trapdoors. But it is what it is. Try to get this thing to pop off here. Get it to pop off. Please don't listen to my stupid ad. So some of you were not too thrilled with the ad libs I did on the header video, and one person commented saying it's kind of a distraction and doesn't add any value to the video. And I commented back, that's kind of exactly what it was meant to do because, well, what ended up happening was I overexposed the last video. So if you look, it's like super bright, and I tried to in post fix that the best I could, but unfortunately, like, I could only do so much. And so at least he was distracted by that and not the actual ugh, poor quality of exposure. And so it was exactly what I wanted it to be, or the distraction I wanted it to be, for one. But two, dude, I've got not severe ADHD, I have ADHD. My brain kind of goes all over the place. Me and my wife both have it, and so like sometimes if there's something that spurs another memory or like something relative to it, almost like mnemonic memorization, we both like literally 10 out of 10 times we'll start on whatever song it reminded us of or quote it reminded us of or like stuff like that. So it's quite the the deal. But anyways, I'm gonna kind of roll this back up and then kind of show you guys a little bit more of the inside of this engine. But here's the inside of the engine. We've got the Icon 11-1 pistons, so forged aluminum pistons. Let me brighten this guy up a little bit. forged aluminum pistons on there. We've got, I forget what connecting rods we got, but we got good connecting rods. See if I can spot a marking on one of them. Either way, but literally, I mean, ARP bolts on this bottom end. So really, really happy with how this is done. We did the high pressure oil pump, the Melling M55 and pickup. So all of that's in and done. Now I just got to clean up all this little gooberness and reseal it before I put the now new oil pan back on. The oil pan that we just pulled off, it was such a cool one for like road race application because it had trap doors not just for the front to rear, but also had trap doors for the side, and that would have been perfect for like when it comes to like handling, braking, like so on, making sure that the engine doesn't get starved of any type of oil in any direction. But for right now, this one's gonna have to do until we come up with a better oiling system, which I would love to do what's called a dry sump system, which is really expensive. So I'm not doing that because we don't.
Really expensive.
Because it's really expensive. So then that's just what that is. But I can't guarantee I'm gonna cancel the ad the not the ad libs, but the little cuts with scenes from other stuff because, well, for me it's fun too. I mean, looking at what YouTube gives me for analytics, right? Like, I've got a bunch of old dudes like me that are the people watching the videos, which I super appreciate. Like, I'm glad you guys find this stuff interesting. Um, it's it's fun and interesting to me, so I'm all about it. But like realistically, if we want to keep this stuff going, like we have to have stuff that appeals to some of the younger generation too. Which there's not a there's a lot of young builders that are out there now, and it's really cool to see. Like, there's a dude here in Southern California named Four Speed Films that's working on his '65 Mustang, and he's added EFI to do it. He's done some cool stuff with it and whatnot, and so it's like, okay, awesome. We do have, like, in Southern California, like, still a burgeoning automotive culture as it's like realistically like known for, and so that's amazing. Now the challenge comes on the continued front of how do we get this to spread more, right? Like, how do we continue to encourage the youth to enjoy the same things that we enjoy? Because, like, dude, kids now, like, their parents get them Uber accounts. Like, driving is not a priority, even though, dude, driving is obviously a ton of fun. And if there was a kid that wanted to come and work with me on this project, and my dad, who will be here next week when we get into some other stuff, if that was, if someone wanted to, like, dude, be all for it, right? Like, that would be awesome. Be happy to pass on knowledge, experience, and memories and things like that to this next generation. I mean, letting him drive the car, I don't know about that, but then I can't forget that my parents somehow entrusted me to a All that, though not overpowered, 64 Ford Falcon Futura with a 302 and a 4-speed, and I beat the ever living crap out of that car at 16. So, granted, it was not as well set up as this one is, but it still was more than enough to get me in trouble. Way more than enough to get me in trouble. Oh man, I remember the first day that I got my license and I took it to school. I took this one kid, Derek. Oh, my nose is running. I took this one kid, Derek. There was a friend of mine or buddy, acquaintance, to go for a ride in it, and I didn't know where the neighborhood I was driving in. I shouldn't have been driving that neighborhood that fast, like all that stuff. And I hit a dip in the neighborhood and launched the car airborne and destroyed the shock towers or the strut towers in the car. Like it was so dumb. So we're doing good. We're doing good. So I also happened to pick up some ARP, some new oil pan bolts for ARP. I like ARP. For one, everybody knows that they've got quite a quality product, and there'll be some people that'll argue like certain circumstances and whatnot, like they're not worth it or whatever. In which, you know, that's just a case by case thing. My family, we actually used to have a promo account with ARP because my mom or my parents, they were not, they were together at the time, but later on divorced. They actually bought the 69 Charger that used to be owned by one of the owners of ARP, Mike. And I personally knew Bob Florin, I believe it was, who was their VP of sales, I believe, sales and marketing. And being that we're all from Ventura, California, like so on and so forth, the we just got along, and they set us up with a promo account, and like for 10 years, like we could just go in there and be like, hey, I need this kit. Be like, oh, you have an account? And be like, yeah, it's, under this name. And I could walk out with, you know, free hardware for whatever it was that I needed. And it was, I mean, it was very sweet of them. So I doubt that they'll see this, but if you guys do see this, please know it was so appreciated. We're so grateful for that because we used that hardware on everything. And it was such a blessing. It really was. But it is a nice little touch to have these black ARP bolts on here, in all honesty. They're pretty nice. Ventura actually was really unique for a lot of really interesting people in Ventura County that were really experts in this, in car culture. You had, I did some work with a guy named Phil LaChapelle, who was really a well-renowned Oldsmobile guy. So worked on tons of Hurstall's 442s and super rare Oldsmobiles that are not even really commonly known. Did some restorations with him. Of course, like a lot of people know, I think his name is Steve Strope in the Simi Valley. There is what's his name? Dean, Sport Trucks by Dean, and I think he also had like a Hot Rods by Dean, and he was in the like Moorpark, Simi Valley area. I actually had it out with him when I was young, over the phone, and did not leave a good impression. I mean, if you guys want to know that story, like, I'll tell you the story, but I'm not going to worry about getting into it right now. And there's just so many. Realistically, really good, hardworking people. Scott's Hot Rods, which is a pretty synonymous hot rod business. They were originated in Ventura. I would help my buddy out at his custom truck shop that was right next door to them, and so we got along with those guys. Scott was the father and who had passed it along to his son at that point in time, and um, I remember I almost went to work for him years and years and years ago, when I was a kid, just to like entry level, get my foot in the door kind of thing, and I ended up not, because I heard some interesting rumors about how they treated their employees at the time, which I'm not saying is true. It was alleged, as people would want to make sure they say. But it's just really cool how much of a car culture there was just in a small town like Ventura.